All right, this is John Krasinski with Colton Coreschi. Colton, we are on moments after the Pittsburgh Riverhounds could not get over the line at Charleston. They lose 1-0 USL Championship quarterfinal round, the Eastern Conference USL Cup playoffs. So here it felt like this team put so much forward in the last 16 to 18 matches, really extended a lot of energy, did a lot of great things. But tonight, it looked like the team that, the first half of the season, just were very sloppy in the final third. That was my biggest concern tonight. It just couldn't really connect passes at the end of things. Then there was just nothing happening in the final third. What were your immediate thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think you're spot on. It reminded me a lot of those two, big winless streaks during the season. Same types of problems, just a lack of connection between your midfield and your forwards. Lots of touches around the box, right? I think outnumbered in terms of touches in the box, 25 to 17. So obviously getting the ball into good places generally.
Hmm.
Outshot Charleston.
Yeah.
But of those 12 shots, six are blocked, five are off target, right? It's not getting to the feet of Kiza, of Jackson in places where they can challenge, Grinwis in goal. And ultimately, they pushed forward pretty heavily in the second half there. Markanich is going to score. That's what he's done all year. And once he did that early, you just needed to see a little more going forward. And that just it never came despite some moments where they really pushed for it.
Well, there was even after the subs in the second half, I thought the energy was good. They were definitely they finally showed a little bit more urgency. But I also think Ben Perriman, I think it was a very well coached effort. Charleston is where they are for a reason. I mean, very organized. They did not give Pittsburgh much, but it just seemed like you said, connecting those passes from the midfield to either to the wide players going forward, out wide, um, and also just trying to play through the middle. Just there wasn't a whole lot there. And then even there were a couple times where they got it maybe on top in front of the box around the arc. It was just another sloppy pass, and it's just nothing connected. So it wasn't very pretty. But I thought Ben Perriman was just said, you know what, we're up 1-0. We're not even gonna try to press you. And I think that's something that the Riverhounds fall into sometimes. I think teams just say, yeah, we'll let you play. We'll let you have possession because we don't think you're going to hurt us that way. We don't think you can break us down effectively. And I think the Hounds showed a little bit of patience there, like on the ball. They weren't like really rushing forward because obviously Charleston had numbers back, but they kind of floundered as they in trying to break down Charleston. It just didn't happen.
Yeah, I mean, that's been sort of the biggest issue that the Hounds have had all year, right? They haven't shown that consistent ability to break down a defense when they decide to sit back. The best games the Hounds have played have been ones where they've scored early, they've gotten an advantage, and they can be the team sitting back, absorbing pressure and countering. And that's exactly the game Charleston played against them. And for all the hype that Markanich has been getting as a goal scorer, the reality is Charleston is maybe the second best defensive team in the league behind the Riverhounds.
Yeah.
So once they get that lead, it's going to be just as hard to get through them. And you mentioned sort of having difficulty getting to the wider players, which has sort of been the Hounds' bread and butter all year, going out wide on the left to Etu, right out wide on the right to whoever's been out there, be it Rivera, Blackstock, and anybody who's been out on the right. This may have been the quietest game we've seen Etu have this year. I mean, he got maybe a couple of touches on the ball and really nothing in dangerous areas. They did a pretty effective job of shutting him down. And once they were able to sit back like that, I mean, you saw they had a couple really good chances, Charleston, later in the game, just off the counter, right? I mean, I think the Hounds are pretty lucky, and Eric Dick had made a couple huge saves to not have been down more than 1-0 and needing to come back there. And they did have that moment where Lilly made his first two substitutions. The Hounds clearly had the fresher legs for that period of time where the ball stayed in play and Charleston couldn't respond. And that was the moment where it felt like if they're gonna get that goal, it's gonna come right here. And once Charleston had a chance to regroup, the ball went out of play. They got their subs on some fresher legs. It felt like that block got set a little bit lower and a little bit more firm, and the Hounds' freshness just couldn't push through.
They couldn't, and no magic moments. And Kenny Canardo Forbes comes in, in that 70th minute. They try that little misdirection free kick. They scored on a goal. They scored a goal during the good streak. I think it was EJ Johnson with it was much closer range free kick, and they did like a little misdirection, found the one guy on the other side of it. And this time it was Danny Griffin, and he had a defender one on one, and he tried to go with his left foot, and it was well defended. I mean, he was step for step with Danny. I thought that was it was a nice effort. It was Bob Lilly, execution was pretty good to get it to Danny Griffin, but Charleston wasn't fooled. And again, they're just very good team, very well coached. I think that was a perfect example there. They are compromised a little bit, but that defender is does his job. Now the goal, Markanich, again, I think it might be a very underrated goal if you think about it in some respect. I mean, that ball was probably near Sean Suber's shins by the time Markanich connected with it with his head. I mean, he dipped really low, and to be able to get that pace on the ball, and to get it past into the far left, inside the left post. Um, I just that's like something. That's why he's not going to be playing in the USL Championship next year. I mean,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think Suber honestly had no idea he was coming in for that. I mean,
yeah.
I didn't expect him to be there. I saw that cross go in, and I'm thinking, oh, that's an easy clearance. And the next thing I know is Markanich is laying on the ground. Somehow he got his head to it, and
Hmm.
it's past Eric Dick. I mean, that's the type of goal he scored all year to get up to 29 on the season, right? Um, and for Suber there, I mean, you just got to be a little more aware of your surroundings, right? You got to know that there's that USL Golden Boot winner standing on your shoulder, and he can do things like that. But it's a tough thing to defend, and it wasn't the worst goal to give up. And realistically, the rest of the match, they did a pretty good job of
Yeah.
keeping Markanich pretty quiet. Actually, I know the broadcast called him the man of the match, but I really think it was actually Arturo Rodriguez who assisted that goal.
Yeah.
Had a one-on-one with Eric Dick later on that could have been the second, and generally was just creating danger everywhere. So they did the job they had to do defensively. And if you're only going to concede that one goal to Markanich, you're in pretty good shape playing Charleston. You just got to find a way to score yourself, and they couldn't. You're not going to. I mean, listen, you're not going to beat anybody scoring zero, right? No matter
Right.
what you hold the opponent to.
Yeah. Only other moment, if you will, that I will point to is, Danny Griffin, terrific ball. He found Jockeson. That's where you need to put Jockeson. You need to put him in space with the defender, and he did have room. I mean, he did create enough space to get a shot off, and I've seen that. That was the very same spot where when he was playing at Pitt, and he hit that shot against number one Kentucky from the top of the box, and he just bend a beautiful ball. I, I mean, that was there. That was on the platter. And after that, I mean, he's got to serve up a better shot than that. In that case, I don't know what happened there. It's kind of a weaker shot. Maybe the defender did take the angle away. It looked like he had like he could get that left foot around it, a better shot off, I thought. But, we can nitpick that. But that was the chance. Like, they're not going to, I don't think Charleston's going to give them too many chances like that throughout that match. So Burton, I'm sure, and he was disgusted after that. I could see the look on his face. It wasn't happening. And he's been subbed just about every game somewhere in the 65th to 70th minute. I mean, the forwards are using a lot of energy, but that was, there weren't going to be a lot of chances, and that was the one that he needed to capitalize on, at least force a good save. So, but Bob Lilly is also not a big proponent of his teams, just settling for shots from distance. He wants to break things down further and get it into the box. But that was the only other moment that I thought, well, I'm sure they would like to have that one back. But yeah, now, look, it, I wouldn't call this season a failure, but there's two ways to look at it. It is a failure because of the standard, the bar that this franchise has set, especially after last year. So in that respect, the season's a failure. They thought, well, maybe, we're gonna get into the playoffs. We're hot. We're playing well. And you still can't come up with a result in the first round and give the fans something to be excited about. So in that respect, in my opinion, it's a failure. But, the positive finish, another playoff berth, another great season in terms of fan support at the gate and all that stuff. So I think there's a lot of positives to take away from the season. That's my perspective. What is yours?
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot of positives to take out of this. I mean, I think the team put themselves into a bit of a corner with sort of inconsistency this year, right? It was losing streak, winning streak, losing streak, winning streak. It was the epitome of inconsistency. And towards the end of that last losing streak before they got hot late on, I mean, Lilly set the target, right? He said we need 48 points. That's what we need to make the playoffs. And they responded and they did the job that they needed to do. They showed that they're capable of it. Um, I think, it reminds me a lot of being a Steelers fan, and that you do get kind of spoiled with with
Mhm.
the Steelers. I haven't seen a losing season since I was like 13 years old, right? And at some point it stops feeling good enough to have winning seasons and it stops feeling good enough to make the playoffs. And that's sort of where the Riverhounds are. And I think this year it stings a little less. I mean, you don't come into this expecting to beat Charleston. You expect to give them a game, and I think they did. Um, I think losing last year as the one seed was a lot harder. Um, but I think what's going to define whether this season was a success or not is how much of this group can you keep together, particularly defensively, where you were really solid all year. And then can you make the additions that turn that lack of connection between midfield and forwards and that lack of finishing at the forward position into more consistent results? Because if you do that, you're right back into the top of the Eastern Conference. I mean, you're not far off from that at all. Giving up 28 goals in a 34 game season, you're going to be competitive with anybody. And it's just finding that missing piece. So I wouldn't call it a failure, certainly. By the standards the organization is set, it's definitely on field, at least, a step back from last year. But I think there's a good foundation here overall. I think a lot of these guys showed that. I mean, I feel like you got to bring Eric Dick back in goal, right? He is your Golden Glove winner for a reason. And even after rotating out a bunch of your defenders coming into this year, they did a really good job. So I think it's all there, and I think you just gotta find those couple missing pieces and just come back next year and you're aiming for a top four spot.
Yeah, I think that's kind of how I feel. I think there's going to be roster changes. Goalkeepers for some reason Bob doesn't usually
They come and go.
he won't re-sign them, but contract option if he's got a contract option on Eric Dick and he's it would be actually I think the fan base if Derek Dick does come back, I think the fan base would appreciate that. I think there's
Yes.
been some a little bit of frustration over the years of how the Hounds do business in terms of re-signing players and things like that. So I think that would be, but he is on. I'm pretty sure that they have his option. So that I would think that would be the smart move, but we'll see about that. But then of course the the fact that Bertrand Jacqueline came in and gave this attack some life, a dynamic player in space which they really didn't have all season long. And it kind of opened everything up for everybody else, including Robbie Mertz, who I think really started to come into his own towards the end of the season. Uh, and of course Kiza, Kiza got the goals. Robbie started to become even more of a playmaker, and that was because Bertrand Jacqueline is drawing more defenders, and uh, he's on loan and he's going back to Salt Real. I mean, I don't know. I mean, the Hounds were able to sign Edward Kiza after he came on loan. But who knows what Real is thinking in terms of Berton. And not only that, I mean, Berton's performance this this short stretch with the Hounds may boost his stock in terms of MLS eyes and other clubs, or even just in the USL Championship. Maybe somebody goes out is willing to spend money on him because I just don't know if the Hounds would be in position um, to compete with that. But we'll see. I mean, but that the type of player I think that they're lacking and that they're going to need going forward. They're going to need those wide guys or guys that can get if Keys comes back because he's at the end of his contract options up. So it's all these. There's going to be a lot. All of that we can have a discussion in the next probably 6 weeks. Actually, less than that because we're in November now. So
Yeah, quick
that'll
turnaround.
be a quick turnaround to December 1st unless anything's changed, right?
Yeah. I mean, so the interesting thing with Jackson, and the thing that gives me hope that he comes back, is that he is going into an option with Real Salt Lake this offseason. And he does still take up an international slot, which is a
Right.
bigger deal in MLS than it is in USL often, especially with a team like the Riverhounds, who tends to build with rookies, who tends to build with domestic players. So he could very well find himself looking for a team, and having that familiarity with Pittsburgh from college, from this, short-term loan this season, and performing well here with Bob Lilly, could be incentive to come back. But I think you're right. Even if it's not him, you need a player who can provide sort of what he provides, in attack, which is a threat, which is something that draws defenders in and frees up some of your other players. There will be guys on the market that are there that can do that. And it's just a matter of, will ownership and the FO go make those moves, and sort of break the mold that sort of they've developed with the fan base, right? Of being sort of, I'm not going to say curmudgeonly, but a little tight with the purse strings when it comes down to it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that we can certainly hash that out in the coming weeks, but I'm sure, the thing is, Bob Lilly will probably have his decisions made. He has his little chalkboard, and he'll just, he'll have his knows who he has coming back, and then he's going to, start building again from whatever it's going to be, maybe 10 to 11 players. They brought more players back last year than they ever did, and they struggled. So that I don't think this is that big of a factor. I think it's more about they got to get off to a good start. They, regardless of what the personnel is, they have to get off to a better start, and they have to be a little bit more creative in the final third. We know the base defensively, they're going to be solid. So, yeah. All right. Well, Colton, any parting thoughts on this Riverhound season? You're first in kind of being around the scene here in Pittsburgh. Just, what were your thoughts on this 2024 season?
Yeah, I mean, just, in spite of the on-field inconsistency, it's been a really fun year. It's been a fun group of players. They're a good group of guys, and the team's done wonderful work both on the field and off the field to get the fan base engaged, to keep them coming out. And there's really only room to grow, especially as soccer continues to grow in this city. And you just hope to see that continue. I think they want it to continue. I think the team wants it to continue. But overall, yeah, just really, really happy that this group of players was able to pull things together down the stretch, get into the playoffs. Really happy, particularly for the rookies that came in this year and put on some really good showings. I think there were a couple of guys who really, got their pro careers off to a really nice start, and I hope to see them continue as well.
That's absolutely the case. Well, Colton, it's been great to have you part of our team this year. We're just, really appreciate your time and your talents. And should be a fun off season. It gets shorter and shorter, it seems, every year.
Yeah, yeah, can't wait to be back in you know 3.5 months time with the start of the next season.
We'll be talking it through all the way through the hot stove time. But yeah, so all right. Well, again, Hounds lose 1-0. This is John Krysinsky, Pittsburgh Soccer Now, signing off sounding off on soccer for the last time in terms of Hounds 2024 season talk. But there will be plenty more to talk about as we move forward. So, all right, have a good night.